Hello, my name is Zoe, and I'm going to be talking about the poem For Annie by Edgar Allan Poe. Um, Edward, Edward Edgar Allan Poe was born January 19th, 1809, and died October 7th, 1849. He was raised and born in Boston, Massachusetts, and he died in Baltimore, Maryland. His hometown was in the south of Boston. That's kind of all it said. His occupation was, of course, his passion to be an American writer, and he also was in the Army. Poe was the second child of two actors. His father and mother's names were David Poe Jr. and Elizabeth Hopkins. Edgar had an older brother named Henry and a younger sister named Rosalie, which I thought was really pretty. Trauma. Unfortunately, in his childhood, he had a lot of trauma. I feel like his whole life was very traumatic. He went through a lot of stuff. And I feel like that's why he writes the way he does, because it's the only way he could express how he was feeling. Um, Poe's father abandoned him in 1810. He was only like 2 years old. After his father abandoned him, his mother passed 2 years later from tuberculosis. He was taken in the care of John and Frances Allen, and that's how he got his name, Edgar Allan Poe. Sadly, he would not have a great relationship with his adopted father, and he would lose his other mother figure and his wife. I believe his wife passed away pretty a little bit right before he wrote For Annie. Um, and yeah. His purpose, motivation, goal for this poem for Annie was, I guess, to show that love can conquer a lot. Um, and then a connection to his society. Edgar was 18 when he was in the army, so that's pretty good connection to society. And he was a writer and inspired a lot of people. I mean, we're still talking about it today. And yeah. How does the poem relate to the society at the time? This piece relates to the society at the time because it involves death, suffering, and love. These are major parts of society. We all go through difficult and good times. It's just, yeah, love, suffering, and death is just part of life. Um, and he kind of I don't know at the time if they would say it, but he kind of brought mental health awareness. Um, you know, Maybe had people back then think about it. Um, Larger audience, I believe, because I want to say both. I want to say larger audience because I'm hoping a lot of people can connect and relate to his writing, but also maybe a single reader because back in the day, it took money, time, and um, printing. I mean, everybody, you didn't have like the way we do now, where you can just search and find it. He had to make it. And I believe his first couple copies he gave away to some people that he was important to him. But other than that, I don't believe there's a lot of copies out at the time. And then I don't think it was politically driven. Um, The only thing I could think of politically maybe is to bring mental health awareness. But like I said, at the time, I don't know if it was such a big deal. Um, and yeah. How does the poem relate to society now? I put that The place, the same I put for the other one. Love, suffering, death. This is um brings light to agony, to grief, to pain, to emotions that we don't really talk about. I feel like our mental health awareness is a lot better than it was back in the day, of course, but not as good as it needs to be. And a large audience or single reader, I believe it's a large audience because now we're at a century where, I mean, I searched it online and found the poem, compared to back then where you had to, get a printer press, had to, mail it. Like it was a lot harder. So I think it's a larger audience in this century. And then politically driven, I think the same thing. It just brings awareness to mental health. I don't think there was really anything politically involved or on purpose. Um, yeah. So now I'm going to play the video for Annie and then kind of uh get into it and kind of talk about it.
Over at last. Called busy is over at last. Sadly, I know I'm sure my strength, and I lost my nerves I was fully. That's you know, especially now maybe
Billy, he started reading another poem. Um, so I'm just gonna stay on this slide, and kind of read section by section and explain why or what I think it means. Thank heaven, the crisis, the danger is past, and the lingering illness is over at last, and the fever called living is conquered at last. I think this, of course, starts off really, um, not, the greatest. It starts off really dark. I think it explains him, um, suicide. It explains him, um, being in, in agony and suffering and comparing living to a sickness. I mean, clearly he was not uh, happy and mentally healthy. And yeah, sadly, I know I'm shorn of my strength, and no muscle I move as I lie at full length. But no matter, I feel I'm better at length. Um, I think he's explaining his pain and how he doesn't have any more strength to move on. And then when he says I'm better at length, it's saying he's better now. Like he's better off where in the afterlife. And as I rest so composedly now in my bed, that any beholder might fancy me dead, might start at beholding me, thinking me dead. He's resting. I feel like when he says I'm resting, he's better now. He's, of course, when I think you think of rest, you think of sleeping and not awake. You think of him not being there. And then when he keeps saying might fancy me dead, thinking me dead, I think he's talking about himself, like his own thoughts, his own, like I don't think it's actually somebody thinking me dead. Um, in my opinion, that's how I take it. Uh, Next is the moaning and groaning, the sighing and sobbing are quieted now, with the horrible throbbing at heart. Ah, that horrible, horrible throbbing. I think he, in this section, is talking about the pain of um living, but also kind of like grief a little bit when he's talking about at heart, the horrible, horrible throbbing. Um, I don't know. I think he's talking about grief. I think if you never lost someone, you might not know what that feeling is. But to me, it means like a piece of your heart is missing, or like it's painful, but there's no physical pain. The sickness, the nausea, the pitiless pain have seized with the fever that maddened my brain, with the fever called living that burned in my brain. Um, he's talking about the pain. He's comparing living to like sickness again. He's saying um, how horrible it was. The pitiless pain, just how painful and agony and suffering he was dealing with. And oh, of all the tortures, that torture the worst has abated the terrible torture of thirst. For Naphtalian river, a passion accursed, I have drank a water that quenches all thirst. I think he's talking about how living was little comparing it to torture and kind of how he tried everything. I feel like when he says I have drink of a water that quenches all thirst, I've tried everything. Not tried, but like I've pushed myself as far as I could go, I guess. To me, that's what he's saying. Of a water that flows with a lullaby sound from a spring, but a very few feet underground, from a cavern not very far down underground. I feel like it's starting, I feel like after what the last one I just read and then the one I just read is showing kind of a difference in his writing, a difference in how he's feeling. Um, a water that flows with a lullaby sound. He's thinking of peace, I feel like, and calm. When you think of a lullaby, it's calm, it puts babies to sleep. And when you think of a spring, you think of a waterfall. I guess that's how I think it. And then it says of water that flows, so I think of a waterfall. So I'm thinking of peace, you know? And next is, and let it never be foolishly said that my room, it is gloomy and narrow, my bed. For a man never slept in a different bed, and to sleep you must slumber in such a bed. I think he's talking about um kind of what he did, he can't take back, I guess. To me, that's kind of what some of these are harder, I feel like, sections to understand what he's trying to say than others. But to me, that's what I think. Um, when he says to sleep, you must slumber in such a bed, you must, you did what you did and you can't take it back. My tantalized spirit her blandly reposes, forgetting or never regretting its roses, its old integrations of myrtillus and roses. Um, I think he's starting to talk about Annie, who to me in the poem represents love. And uh, I also think he's talking kind of about um, the joy are not regretting. It says forgetting or never regretting. It's roses. Like, I think he's not regretting, but realizing maybe he should have and saw, I don't know, like enjoyed, like stop and enjoy the smell of roses, when you hear something like that. That's kind of what I think. Next is for now, while so quietly lying, it fancies a hollower odor about it of pansies, a rosemary odor, cam camelligelide with pansies, with rue and the beautiful Pertuni pansies. Um, to me, it's a lot about smell, and I think he's talking about death. That's kind of what I think he's talking about. Like I said, some of these are really hard. Like I think I can think of it, but you can't like say it out loud, kind of thing, or like you can't ex think of the words. But yeah, I think it's talking about a smell, like how the last one I was talking about smell, and it keeps talking about smell. Maybe next is so it lies happily, bathing in Minnie, a dream of the truth and the beauty of Annie, drowned in a bath of the trees of Annie. Um, to me, he is starting to get to me he's starting to talk about Annie, so I feel like in this writing he's starting to see the beauty, feel the love and the comfort from Annie. Um, and yeah, she tenderly kissed me, she fondled and caressed, and then I fell gently to sleep on her breast, deeply to sleep from the heaven of her breast. So this one was like, when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, a little weird. But to me, it's just expressing the comfort and love he feels from Annie. And from the heaven of her breast, I feel like just means comfort and love. Next, when the light was extinguished, she covered me warm, and she prayed to the angels to keep me from harm, to the queen of the angels to shield me from harm. This is probably like my favorite saying out of the poem. But when uh when he says she covered me warm to keep me from harm, to shield me from harm, it shows protection, shows comfort, shows love. I mean, and she prayed to the angels to keep, and it just shows the love and comfort she was trying to show him. And I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love, that you fancy me dead. And I rest so contently now in my bed, with her love at my breast, that you fancy me dead, that you shudder to look at me, thinking me dead. Um, so with this one, he kept saying, he started adding, think you fancy me dead, that you fancy me dead, that you fancy me dead, thinking me dead. To me, he's talking to himself, I feel like. I don't think there's anybody that actually wants him dead. I think not himself, but like the negativity towards himself. Um, and maybe um regretting a little bit, knowing her love with her love at my breast, like having this love and this comfort and support, but it's kind of being too late. But my heart is brighter than all of many stars in the sky, for it sparkles with Annie, it glows with the light of the love of my Annie, with the thought of the light of the eyes of my Annie. So this is, I feel like, very different than the beginning of the poem, and it shows you a whole different, his perspective and everything. I mean, it's all just positive, but my heart is brighter than all the many stars in the sky. It shows he feels loved, he feels happiness, and for it sparkles with Annie, for Annie gave him this happiness, Annie helped him through this hard time. And like I said, I think Annie is represented by one of his friends, Nancy, who helped him through probably a hard time. Like I said, losing people like that is that fast in that short amount of time and that much of a important person is crazy. And very difficult for anybody to have to go through. So next I have the poem Praise. Oh, we pretty much just went through it. Pretty much just talking, like I said, the message, and like I said, to me, love conquers all. Love is last. Poem pattern I put is I had to choose between free verse or pattern. I chose pattern. And then rhyme scheme or meter, I chose meter. When I was searching it, it said that it had rhythm scheme, but also it had a meter with it, which is having like 6 to 7 syllables, and 7 to 8 syllables right after each other. And so, yeah, I chose that. And the 2 quotes I chose, thank heaven, the crisis, the danger is past, and the lingering illness is over at last, and the fever called living is conquered at last. This shows a pattern by ending every other line with past and last, and adding a lullaby effect. And then the next one is, I'm shorn of my strength, and no muscle I move, as I lie at full length, but no matter, I feel better at length. This shows a pattern by ending every line with strength and length. And rhyming together and adding, like I said, another lullaby effect. I think that's why I like this poem too, and why I like certain kind of, I guess, rapping too, is the rhyme. It sounds like a lullaby. It feels like it moves smoother than other kinds of writing styles. And next I am going to talk about the 3 themes. Sorry, my stuff's all messed up. The 3 themes, theme 1 I put as, this is the quote, but for theme 1 I put is the importance and power of love and how nurturing love can be when you're lost and alone. So for a quote I put, and then I fell gently to sleep on her breast, deeply to sleep from the heaven over her breast. I think the image of Annie's breast is nurturing love. She's giving him a mentally dark and challenge. She's giving him love during a mentally and dark time in his life, and it shows how important her love is to him when he needs it. For theme 2, I put it is a transformation from a tormented and suffering soul to a peaceful state of rest, and I guess like death, for his example. This quote is, thank heaven, the crisis, the danger is past, and the lingering illness is over at last, and the fever called living is conquered at last. This is the first thing he says and in the poem, and it's pretty much showing how he in the beginning was thinking living was a sickness and something he didn't want to do no more, and he was alone, and now at the end he is resting, he is happy, he is done suffering. And then for 3 I put for a theme, finding somebody or something that brings us hope, comfort, and light during a challenging time in our life. And the quote I put was, when the light was extinguished, she covered me warm. This quote just explains how Annie is his light, his protection, his comfort, when he feels alone. Annie is his support system. I feel like everybody should have a support system, and that was her. Like I said, she was based on actually a person of his, a friend of his named Nancy. And yeah, so those are my three themes and quotes. 5 poetic devices. The first one is a metaphor. I put "and the fever called living." This is one of the most notable metaphors I feel like in his work, or at least in the Annie, or for Annie. The author states that, I guess that fever called living, it symbolizes the pain and exhaustion of life and living for him. The author states that life itself is painful and hard to overcome. This device, poetic device, shows how miserable and unhealthy his mental health was at the time. Yeah, calling living a sickness, it definitely shows negativity toward being alive. Poetic device number 2 is rhyme. So I put "the sickness, the nausea, the pitiless pain have seized with the fever that maddened my brain, with the fever called living that burned in my brain." So for this one, this is an example of a rhyme because it matches the same vowel. Also, it shows the overall message of the poem because it shows his serenity with agony and death and how he feels like it'll never end. Number 3 is personification. I put "but my heart is all brighter than all of the many stars in the sky." I put that it is this example, it chances the overall message of the poem because Annie's seniority of love, it's pretty much seniority of love and suffering in this poem. But I feel like the love and comfort give him happiness and his heart brighter with the stars, and it showed that, love can overcome a lot. Being there for somebody can help them. Poetic device number 4, I put alteration, the sighing and sobbing. This is repetition of constant sounds like sighing and sobbing. So this helps with the overall message of the poem because it shows hurt he was feeling. The quote shows how much he needed serenity of Annie's love, and the serenity of death seemed better than living. He needed her love. The sighing and sobbing, that it just shows how bad he needed help. Number 5, I put poetic device as irony. I put "thank heaven, the crisis, the danger is past, and the lingering illness is over at last, and the fever called living is conquered at last." I put this shows irony because comparing living and sickness. And it also shows the overall message of the poem because it shows transformation from tormented, suffering soul to a peaceful state of rest, of serenity. Of suffering and death. Yeah. So that's kind of what I chose and wrote in my paper too. Mood and tone. I put for the mood tone is a peaceful and serene, but also reflective. And what I mean by that is because it's peaceful and serene because the poem shows a peaceful ending to suffering, but also makes you reflect on the narrator, I guess, and the writer, Edgar Allan Poe, on why his desire for peace and the idea of death being the answer, and also why he was feeling this horrible. It was affected by some poetic devices. One example is the Number one, thank heaven. The crisis, the danger is past, and lingering illness is over at last. And the fever called living is conquered at last. I know I've said that a lot, but this is like, I feel like a really important part of the poem that it just goes with a lot. This, like I said, is a metaphor and is used in the poem, and it shows the desire for peace and him being done suffering. Number two, example two is the sickness of nausea, the pitiless pain have ceased with the fever that maddened my brain, with the fever called living that burned in my brain. This just shows, like I said, that how living was so hard and difficult and agony and suffering, and the only way to him that could end it was dying. Number three, but my heart is all brighter than all the many stars in the sky. I put that this is personification, and it is used to show a peaceful ending to suffering by having Annie's love and comfort through the process of afterlife. Number four, I put in the fever called living is conquered at last. The fever and like living, and the same thing it shows is irony, and it shows the idea of how living is horrible and death is the only way that could save him. Number five is an example of Annie's love giving him comfort, serene and peaceful end to suffering. And I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love. This shows that he knows he's loved, that he's comforted, that, it's a peaceful ending. Number six, the moaning and groaning, the sighing and sobbing are quieted now. This shows the pain he has gone through at a peaceful end and done. He's done suffering. It's quieted. I feel like it shows kind of what his how he mentally was, but also how maybe inside his head was, how hard it was. Like everything's quiet. Number seven, and I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love. So 5 and 7 are the same, but for 7, for the same quote, I also wanted to say that this shows the narrator has someone like Annie's love transforming him with hope, comfort, and peace through his dark times. Yeah. And that's it. Okay, sorry. So the narrator, when we got asked, I thought it was very interesting because a lot of times it isn't the writer. It's, you're telling stories, but to me, especially poems, I feel like are very personal. And of course, this, if you do read it on your own, you heard me say it, but if you do read it on your own and you do learn a little bit about him, you kind of can see, okay, this is a little bit personal. This is a little bit about him. So I put, in my opinion, that the narrator was Edgar Allan Poe, and it was about him. The reason why is because of his past traumas and loss. Losing two fathers. I mean, he might not have been close, but still. Losing two fathers and two mothers. And losing your wife in the same span of, I mean, I don't think it was very long, but that's just a lot of people very close to you to lose and probably feel very alone. And of course, learning about him, he was when we learned about him in school, known to be very dark with his writing and stuff and have mental struggles. And yeah, so reason why I picked these quotes. The first one is the sickness, the nausea, the pitiless pain have ceased with the fever that maddened my brain, with the fever called living that burned in my brain. I put this shows I think why it's Poe is because of the man speaking and struggling with a mental illness. Like I said, Poe was known to have mental health struggles and known, actually, I think no one really knows how he passed, but a lot of people think it was a lot of people believe that it was suicide. So yeah, I think this just shows a lot of these quotes are just going to show his mental health struggles. Number 2, the moaning and groaning, the sighing and sobbing are quieted now. This shows how poor his mental health was, the struggle of loss of a loved one, and yeah, the moaning, the groaning, the sighing, the sobbing. You can take that as in his head, but I also kind of took it as losing somebody, and the struggle you have with that. Number 3, I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love. Some of these are going to be about Annie, because like I said, it was based on somebody true. This shows his love for his friend Nancy, who helped him through his hard times. Like I said, I believe before this was written, his wife passed. And yeah, that definitely could put somebody in a mental state like the way he has written. Number 4, I put, sadly I know I'm shorn of my strength, and no muscle I move as I lie at full length, but no hard matter, I feel I am better at length. I think this shows how defeated somebody can feel. He lost his strength. He's done. I feel better now at length. When he says I'm better at length, means I'm better now. I'm done. That's kind of what I got from it. Like I said, this shows to me Poe because, like I said, his mental health struggles. Number 5, when the light was extinguished, she covered me warm. She prayed to the angels to keep me from harm, to the queen of the angels to shield me from harm. This is one I picked and one of my favorite. And like I said, explains the love and support he had with his friend Nancy. I mean, like I said, in the book he uses the Annie, but like I said, Annie's also expressed as love, support, and happiness. Number 6, I put, but my heart is brighter than all of the many stars in the sky. This shows also how his friend Annie comforted him by, when he says my heart is brighter than all the many stars in the sky, it means he's happy. He's not in pain. And then I fell asleep on, sorry, my thing's covering it. But this quote, and I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love that you fancy me dead, from the heaven of her breast. This shows how, like I said, I thought it was weird having this in there. I was like a little weirded out, but it shows her. I feel like the comfort of her breast when he says that he means comfort and love from her. That's what he feels. And yeah. So for this one, personal reflection, the 2 major questions was why this poem and how can you relate, and then your favorite quote or favorite line. I chose this poem because I've learned about him and his writing in his past, and it's always been kind of dark, but it's always been really beautiful at the same time, his writing. And I feel like especially for Annie, it's talking, it not trying to hide behind the fact it's talking about mental health struggles and suicide, but it's also showing that it's gonna, to me, ending it the way he did shows it's gonna be okay. Like I said, I just love the way he writes. It's very elegant, very beautiful, and he's a person that lost a lot, and now we know. But I feel like back then, of course, no one knew everybody's business. But I feel like it explains why he was the way he was. Why they say he passed away by suicide. But yeah, I chose this poem because the way he wrote and because it talks about mental health, and I feel like it's not talked about enough. And definitely back in the day, I don't think it even was a thing, or a word, I guess. It was a thing, but not a word. But I think it needs to be more out there. For relate, um, I think anybody can relate to it, but to me, I relate by, you know, it shows pain and suffering and love, and it shows, everybody has hard days, everybody goes through stuff that we don't know, and yeah, anybody can relate to having a hard time, to thinking maybe it's the end, and yeah. My favorite quote, or my favorite line, is when the light was extinguished, she covered me warm, and she prayed to the angels to keep me from harm, to the queen of the angels to shield me from harm. I thought this was my favorite out of there because first off, it's probably one of the most positive parts in the poem, but it showed me, it reminded me, I should say, um, of of, a prayer, I guess you could say, and also reminded me of my mom, who passed away. It kind of reminds me that, when he says angels to keep me, in harm, and it reminded me of, you have someone above watching you. I don't know, it's just very beautiful, and so that was probably my favorite. So, questions I put, what do you think the theme was? Everybody probably has a different idea. I mean, everybody might not think the same way as me. And then do you think with a different writer the meaning would change? I think we got asked that for the essay, and I thought that was very interesting question. And I kind of want to see what you guys think. I think, of course, I mean, a different writer, it's going to be different, but like, would, with the word changes and little word changes and stuff, would the meaning behind it change? Um, what was the meaning behind Annie to you guys? I think to me, she represented his friend Nancy, but I think she could also represent a lot of different things. And I just want to see what you guys think. And then questions: do you connect with the poem? And then, like I said, do you relate? I feel like anybody could, but just kind of what do you relate to maybe? And then what line stuck out to you from the poem? Maybe what your favorite line was, or yeah, if you like, I think the first part of the poem, it makes you go, whoa, like what's going on? Yeah. Anyway, next is my works cited page, and that's it. Thank you.